Well, howdy there, Internet people. It's Bo again. So, today we are going to talk about information for public consumption and talks, maybe, that might be happening, and how things happen at times. Because I got a message, and it's interesting because there's a bunch of speculation in it, but I mean, it's not wrong. um, it's not off base. The message was basically, hey, I saw that bit about how a lot of times statements are designed for public consumption when you're talking about foreign policy, and I was wondering if that had anything to do with the weird requests from Mexico. Maybe. Okay, so if you have no idea what's going on, Mexico has offered to help with the U.S. southern border. Okay? In exchange for that, they want two things. They want the U.S. to help with development in the migrants' home countries, and they want the U.S. to re examine its relationship with Cuba and open talks. We've talked about it before on the channel. Both of these things, they're pretty good ideas. I mean, let's be real about the situation in the migrants' home countries. The overwhelming majority of them, the situation was caused by bad U.S. foreign policy. And if it wasn't directly caused by it, it was certainly not improved by it. So it would make sense for the U.S. to kind of clean up its own mess there. That tracks. When it comes to Cuba, the U.S. policy towards Cuba is dated. It is dated. It is out of date. It is based on the dynamics of the Cold War. So the real crux of the question is, why would the Mexican president ask for this in such a public way? I mean, I would ask how you would get Republicans on board with opening talks with Cuba or providing developmental assistance to the migrants' home countries. If you wanted to do that as part of a sweeping change to U.S. foreign policy, I mean, how might you get Republican support for it? Tie it to the border. I mean, it makes sense. There's zero evidence that this is what occurred. And if you're not catching the implication here, the idea is that perhaps Biden, or Biden's foreign policy team more likely, was like, hey, why don't you ask for this in public? You get a win, you look great, because we'll try to get it done, and everybody gets what they want. And it helps the U.S., in domestic politics. It helps generate support for the idea because Mexico will help with the border. Yeah, I mean, it makes sense, but there's no proof that that occurred. But, I mean, it would just be a phone call. It's interesting to think about, but it's important to understand that there's no evidence and there won't be if it occurred. But yeah, that is how things at times are created for public consumption. Because it is time to reevaluate the U.S. relationship with Cuba. It is time for the U.S. to clean up its mess. this is a good way to get Republican support for it. But there's no way anybody would ever find out that was true. It would fall under those. It would fall into the category of a conspiracy theory that's kind of believable, but it is super unlikely there would ever be any evidence of that. But that is how it might work. Anyway, it's just a thought. Y'all have a good day.